Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Tiana.
And this is Next Door Villain,
a podcast where we uncover the villains to discover their humanity.
Okay, I have a very important question for both of you.
Okay.
I want to know what Lady Eboshi you are today and why. Okay, here are the options. Number 1, you're the Lady Eboshi who wants to do some combat/knife fighting. Number 2, you're the Lady Eboshi who wants to shoot at a god. Number 3, you're the Lady Eboshi who feels remorseful and sorry. Or number 4, you're the Lady Eboshi who wants to create a thriving town/place.
Tiana, this one's pretty easy for me. I am the Lady Eboshi who is ready for combat and knife fighting.
Nice.
Which we'll get into a little bit later, I think, because I feel like as we talk about Princess Mononoke, we are going to have some conflicting ideas about the film and how much we liked it.
That's interesting that you know that already.
That's just my suspicion.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but
so you're ready to fight.
Yes,
you're like,
I'm ready to.
Let's pull out some knives.
I'm ready to upset our listeners, and
you're very excited. I know you have comments that are just like right at the tip of your tongue.
Oh yes. Okay, all right, that's my answer.
I think today I am option number 4, the Lady Eboshi who wants to create a thriving town/place. Because I feel like it's just been very tumultuous lately. I mean, there's been COVID. I've moved twice in the past couple of years. I've had like 3 job changes, and I kind of just want to thrive and have a little more stability. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's what Lady Eboshi wanted, some stability for her town. So that's good. Okay, I am number 2, the Lady Eboshi who wants to shoot at a god. Well, one, that sounds badass. I mean, I know it's not great, but one reason why Lady Eboshi shoots at animal gods in the forest spirit is because she wants things to go her way, and the gods try to combat that. Like, she wants the forest the way she wants it to be, not how the gods want it. And I really want my way today. I want things to go my way, even if it means disregarding what the gods or the universe want for me. It's my way or the highway. If I want to do a certain task today, then I will do it and do it my way, even if the universe is like, no, don't do that. That's not a good idea for your future. Or like, I really want to eat shrimp scampi today, so I will eat it at my time, in my way. And I will tell someone, even a god, to go away if they stop me from me and my shrimp scampi.
Well, Tiana, what I really hope that you do want to do today is to have an in-depth conversation and exploration of Lady Eboshi from the film Princess Mononoke. Is that in your desires? Because
No.
if not, you're gonna have a bad time here.
Of course it is. Of course it is. It is in my desires, so I'm not so upset about that.
Yes. And you're going to want to do that, I hope, with a mysterious other woman's voice who has appeared on the podcast today, but we neglected to introduce her for reasons that are unclear. So please welcome to the podcast for the second time, Annie.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, yeah, I'm Annie, and I'm in Austin, Texas, and I'm a writer and a journalism student, and I'm also a podcast host of Misfits, which is a show where we have conversations about identity with people who felt like they don't fit into their communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to be here for the second time.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Annie, you might remember if you're listening from the Oren Ishii episode a while back. And Annie, I think one of the cool things and one of the reasons we're excited to have you, and one of the reasons I also really enjoy your podcast, is in some ways it's very similar to what we do in that you are sort of exploring different perspectives, only we're doing it in a silly way with fictional characters, and you're doing it in a very good way with real people.
Well, I think it's good to do it with villains too. It's all an exercise in empathy, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being with us, Annie. And the villain who we're talking about today is
Lady Eboshi.
Woo!
I don't know if you wanted me to say that or if you were waiting to build suspense.
I'm just going to do a brief overview on Lady Eboshi and her role in the film of Princess Mononoke. Since if you're listening, you're probably a fan of Studio Ghibli films, but even then, it still may have been some time since you saw Princess Mononoke.
Yep. Came out in 1997, or released at least in the US in 1997.
Yes. Lady Eboshi, she is what?
Lady?
Leader. Yes, she's the leader. She is the leader of Irontown. She's made the town of Irontown into a powerhouse that produces
Iron.
Iron.
I feel like we're in a class.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
I didn't know I'd be quizzed on this podcast.
So she's a pretty badass leader. She's developed Irontown. She's welcomed lepers as workers and people of the town. And she also bought out women who worked at brothels and gave them the opportunity to live, thrive, and work in Irontown. So she's definitely someone who really welcomes and supports people from many different walks of life, even if they were oppressed and not treated well in other areas or in other places, which is kind of, I think a lot of people agree, is a good thing about Lady Eboshi. But Lady Eboshi needs iron ore to keep her town thriving, and Irontown makes iron from the ore in the sand, and the town makes weapons, steel, iron, and so she really wants to clear the forest to get more iron ore, which isn't good as it creates conflict between nature and the people of Irontown, and the animal gods in this movie are not happy about Lady Eboshi's aggressive decimation of the forest. During one of the conflicts, she shot Nego, a boar who ended up getting cursed with hatred and who spread his curse to the main character, Ashitaka. So, kind of rough there. But she, and I'm sure you two can agree with me that she's a very assertive, confident leader and fighter who seems like she'll stop at nothing to get iron ore and help her town. And then in this movie, she wants to get the head of the forest spirit, or the Shishigami. It's not good to try and get the head of the Shishigami or the forest spirit.
That's a matter of perspective.
Okay, yes.
This is where Joe has thoughts.
Yes. And to Lady Eboshi, it's very good, right? If she can obtain the forest spirit's head, she gets 1, the animals will no longer be gods who can fight back when she overtakes the forest. If that happens, she gets to have a wealthy village with prosperous people who produce iron, like if she can get the forest for herself and shoot off the head of the forest spirit. 2, she gets to gain legal protection of Irontown. This protection would be granted by the emperor. 3, maybe she can use the head of the forest spirit to cure the lepers, because the forest spirit is known to grant immortality. And 4, by giving the head to Jigo, who helps her out in this movie, she can repay him for letting her use his riflemen to defend Irontown from invaders. Jigo will then give the head to the emperor for money. So, a lot of financial gain and a lot of protection and immortality to be gained by getting the forest spirit's head.
Definitely. I always think it's interesting, too, in the movie. I'm assuming she's selling the iron to other towns, and that's where they're getting their wealth. But it really seems in the movie, it's like she's just using the iron to build these weapons, and then the weapons is what she uses to, like, kill the animals to clear the forest. So it's like, are you just creating this cycle? Like, what are you gaining from this,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good observation.
Well, so
Yeah.
And before we dive into our analysis, I'm interested from you two, your like general, how do you feel about the movie as a whole? Like, is this like a movie you enjoy? Is it a movie you don't like? Like, how do you feel about Princess Mononoke as a whole and the story it tells?
We weren't expecting this, Joe.
Annie and I like to prepare. No, just
I mean, are your feelings complicated or?
I love the imagery and the art and the fact that this movie is trying to show that not being one with nature can lead to a lot of chaos and destruction that impacts both parties, both nature and humans. I like this movie, and a lot of people like this movie because it's kind of relatable to today's issues with climate change. Not totally, right? But it's just like, oh, here's a warning that if you try to break down nature, it's going to come back and get you, kind of like how the black ooze comes back and tries to get Irontown.
And I'm kind of wondering, maybe this is where Joe is going. It has a very environmental message, but in the end, it makes it kind of like, oh, both sides kind of have a point, which is maybe what Joe is going to get into.
Yeah.
In a way that it makes it not entirely like, oh, humans are just destroying the environment and using the resources, they're evil, therefore they should be stopped. It's kind of like, well, the people needed these resources to thrive. It was a lot of oppressed people, these lepers, these former sex workers, that they needed to kind of like thrive and have a successful town. And so I think some people probably like that message because I think the Ghibli movies do a really good job of not having just a black and white good and evil. It's kind of morally ambiguous. But I'm sure some people are like, well, maybe it should have taken a stronger environmental stance.
Yes. The reason I wanted to know how you all felt about it is because I didn't really like the film, largely for those reasons. Yet I struggled I did a lot of research. I listened to a lot of other podcasts. I talked to a lot of people I know. And this movie seems to be sort of universally beloved. And it was sort of a struggle to find any sort of critical analysis of the storyline and what happened. And that is my main gripe with it, is I feel like the story is sort of intended to show that there is good and evil on both sides, and that like Lady Eboshi is sort of initially presented as this villainous character, but then we see her softer side where she's taking care of people and we're supposed to sympathize with her because of that. But I just didn't feel that sympathy or any reason to want to feel sympathy towards her side of the story, because ultimately Ashitaki is sort of like this traveler who's just like, for much of the film, just observing and we're seeing things from his perspective as a sort of a neutral character in this war. But I was so frustrated that his thing was constantly like, no violence, let's just be at peace. When really what's occurred here is that this group of humans has come into this area, depleted of its resources, and now in order to get more is just trying to destroy this forest through whatever means possible. And we're supposed to like have sympathy towards both sides here. And in the end, when they are sort of at peace, the nature just comes back and there's like, it's just like both sides are just going to move on as if nothing happened, when one side, from my point of view, was clearly the aggressor, and that was the humans who've done irreparable harm to the environment that's going to take years and years to like come back and fix.
I also think it's interesting at the end, because I've been doing some reading, you know, when kind of nature takes over and Lady Eboshi is there, and I think Ashitaka comes up to her and she says, oh, like she feels very remorseful, it sounds like, maybe from what she did. And she says, oh, I'll build a better town. And I think it's a little bit unclear whether she means, okay, we'll build a new town that's kind of one with nature, that's not as exploitative, or does it mean she's just going to do the whole thing over again and make it bigger and better and with more vengeance? And I kind of read some things that some people think it's the former and some people think it's the latter. And I'm curious what your interpretation of that ending was.
I think that whatever she's going to do to rebuild is not going to be enough to repair the harms that she's already caused. Like ultimately, if they're rebuilding Irontown, they're rebuilding a city that has already depleted the resources that it needs to thrive, because that seems to be the only thing the city is designed to do. And if it is going to continue to do that, it needs to be taking more from the land. And I just don't see a way that she can come back unless she is doing something to actively give back to the environment to help it rebuild. I'm not optimistic for the future of Irontown.
You kind of take the stance of San, like Princess Mononoke, because I think her view at the end, and I've also read some things that agree with this, where she's kind of nihilistic. Like at the end she says, I hate the humans, I'll never forgive them for what they did, and she goes back into the woods. And I'm not sure, Joe, when you say you're supposed to empathize with Lady Eboshi. I'm not sure if that's entirely true. I think they try to complicate her character so that she's not just, like a Disney villain where there's no redeemable qualities. But I really think that you're not supposed to be on her side. I think that you feel like when she gets her arm bitten off, like that's very justified, that her town should be destroyed. I think you're supposed to be on the side of the forest spirits. And
I will say, and maybe this is sort of tainted by all the different podcasts I listen to, is that like broadly other people who are talking and writing about her that I like seem to be like sympathetic towards her side of the story and feel like that was a good positive thing. And that's what I disagree with. Oh, and the idea that like, I think that we're also supposed to see bad in the nature side, that like their sort of aggressive tendencies we're supposed to see as like bad parts. But I'm like, yeah, you deserve to be angry. Like,
like you're like the boars who are like, we're going to go fight.
And some of the things that we're supposed to like appreciate about Lady Eboshi, I think are kind of frustrating as well. And like make me question, for example, her thing about the sex workers that she's like purchasing from brothels and then bringing to her place. Like we're supposed to commend her for that, which to me is like sort of a questionable view of sex workers, first of all, and what they do. And maybe perhaps she does actually give them a better life than they had before, but better doesn't necessarily mean good, because she's brought them and really everyone else, the lepers and the other people in this town, to a factory town where their sort of well-being depends on them working. And yeah, they get as much food as they want, but they're just in this like industrial capitalist production where they have to work. These women have to work 4-day shifts doing hard physical labor. And to me, I have to wonder, like, is that really better? Like, do we really get to congratulate Lady Eboshi for doing that for these women? I don't know.
I think that's fair. And there is a line where I think it's maybe Toki or one of the women who works in the factory. She does say, this is hard work, like we're tired. But I think at the same time, the way that they portray it, at least in the movie, is the women seem pretty empowered in this town. It seems to be a city that's not only has a female leader, but kind of the women run the show, right? I think even the men sometimes say something about like, oh, the women here are really, they say whatever they want, or, which I think they're trying to show that that's not typical in the society that they live in.
Yeah. I like the portrayal of like the individual women, I think was cool and empowered, but sort of the general concept of like saving women from these brothels to bring them to a place where they're just going to do hard, heavy labor, and they can't really leave or do anything else. Like they're sort of trapped here.
Yeah, I see your points. I had similar thoughts when there's that scene where they're like working really hard and they're like sweating and they're just like, oh, this is a lot of work. It's like, oh, okay, you just came here to be exploited again, but I don't know for sure, right?
Yeah. I guess sort of the other frustrating view of that is that in order to be successful, or in order to, like for Lady Eboshi, in order to be a leader, or for these women, in order to be empowered, they have to be doing masculine things. Like they have to be doing labor in order to be empowered. Or Lady Eboshi has to get her power and strength from going out and killing things and causing violence. And she has to sort of hide her like quiet, nice, feminine stuff, which she only shows to people in more intimate, smaller settings. I don't like that either.
But I kind of interpreted that as that's who she is. Like she is assertive. She is aggressive. She is a leadership type.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because she was so, in those smaller, more intimate moments, she was so loving and caring with her people.
And I don't think she's hiding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Tiana. I think that's just kind of like who she's supposed to be. I do think the concept of gender is really interesting, and I think Studio Ghibli movies are really interesting in how they kind of like play with gender and they kind of subvert certain things. And actually, as kind of a side note, but I don't know if either of you listened to the movie in Japanese with the English subs, but the voices in a lot of the Japanese versions, like say there's a female character, they'll have like a male voice or vice versa. And so, for example, in this one, Moro, which is like the wolf god, who's kind of a mother figure, in English version has a woman's voice, but in the Japanese version, it's actually a male, I believe, actor who's like very famous for being a drag queen, but identifies as a man. And so I think those are interesting. And more to the point of Lady Eboshi, I looked this up, and this was on like the Ghibli wiki and also Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. But apparently the outfit that she wears, and I don't know Japanese, so I might be butchering the name, but Ashira Byoshi, which was an outfit that female dancers wore in kind of like the Middle Ages, mostly like 1100s in Japan. And they were female dancers, but they were dressed as men, which I think is interesting if that's true. Yet part of her look is very feminine, right? She's got the bright red lipstick. She has kind of like a bow or a ribbon in her hair that's pink. So I think that they're trying to play a little bit with her gender there. And she has some masculine elements and she has some feminine elements as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so those are sort of my grievances with the film, but I wanted to bring them up specifically because I felt there was such a lack of nuance in what I was reading about this movie, and it was so hard to find anything sort of critical because it is so beloved, and that really frustrated me. So that's why I was so excited to like talk about these things. But there were a lot of things I loved about the film. I mean, some of the animation is really beautiful and creepy. There's some like beautifully creepy moments, like when the boar is covered in those demon leech worm things. And then near the end, when the people have like skinned the boars and they're like hiding underneath them, that was like such a creepy, cool sequence. And the fact that there are these sort of interesting levels to dissect sort of speaks to something about the writing of the film that is worthwhile and valuable.
It's so interesting because this film is so gray, and so are the characters, and that aligns with a lot of Miyazaki's films. Like, a lot of characters aren't just good or bad or feminine or masculine or, yeah, there's just a lot of complexity in each of them. And then, like, at the end, it's vague. And I did want to say about the ending, I didn't really notice that until I rewatched it too, that at the end, Lady Eboshi just says something like, oh, we're going to make a better town. But then she didn't expand on what that meant. And I was like, what do you mean, woman? Like, I was kind of like yelling at the screen a little bit, like, say more, explain, please. But I was a little bit more optimistic because she had witnessed a really intense consequence of what happens when you don't respect nature and the animal gods. I just can't picture many people being like, oh, the entire town got destroyed and we almost all died because of the black ooze from something that I did, and then they don't make it better and they don't change. You know, I just feel like that's such a big event that can make her change her mind and can make her decide to do something better with the town and make it into something that doesn't harm nature to the same degree. I don't know if you can ever make a town that doesn't have at least some negative impact on nature. But
well, I think you can. I think sort of the argument against that would be that like there were, and you could argue this as well, that like the indigenous communities, in this case, like the one that Ashitaka was from, were sort of living in, what do you call it?
Like more harmoniously with nature.
Yeah.
I think at the end, though, Ashitaka plans to stay with the Iron Town because he can't go back to his own village as per the rituals and the beliefs, right? It's like once he leaves, he can't come back. And so my understanding was at the end he planned to stay there because his view is very much on the side of like, let's live in harmony with nature. I imagine that his presence would have an influence on Lady Eboshi's decisions and how Iron Town was reformed as well.
Hopefully.
I think it has, like, the ending, while it is ambiguous, I think it has a hopeful feel at the end. You know, a lot of the movie is just like, this is what raw hatred looks like and what it can do to you. And at the end, there's, like you said, everything kind of like flourishes and it's growing again. And whether or not you think that was a good ending, I think it's a hopeful ending is what they were going for.
I don't know if Lady Eboshi deserves a second chance. She's already killed 2 forest gods and that didn't slow her down. So even if she learned her lesson, I'm just not sure if she gets to do the job again. Like, how many chances do you get before there's a bunch of other people like Taki? Maybe she could try leading and maybe she'd do a better job. I don't know. I thought Lady Eboshi was a bad woman. And now I'm going to try to empathize with her the rest of this episode.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
We need a devil's advocate, right?
Yeah.
Life is about texture, and if we don't have difference in opinions, then what are we really doing here?
Yeah.
Back to you, Tiana.
So let's talk about the part where she does shoot off the head of the forest spirit. Okay. I keep saying like shoot off the head, and that feels really disrespectful. I feel like
that's
she
factually what occurred.
Honorably decapitates.
I guess this kind of supports Joe's point a little bit, is that one thing that Lady Eboshi does as a leader that's not very good is she's about to kill the forest spirit, but then Ashitaka is like, OMG, your town is getting invaded by samurai right now. You need to go back. You have to. And she's like, no, they can handle it. Which I guess you can look at it in both good and bad ways, right? Like, I trained my women. I know they can handle it. I'm not just some dude who's going to say, no, they can't do it, so I'm going to be their Lord and Savior. They can do it themselves. But then she also kind of leaves them high and dry. So,
right, which you also see at the beginning, right? It's like one of the first scenes of Lady Eboshi is when they're I think they're bringing rice or something back to Irontown, and then Princess Mononoke and the forest spirits, they come and attack, and a bunch of men like fall off the cliff or they're injured or whatever, and someone is like, oh, should we go back for them? And she's like, hell no, we're going home, we're gonna eat, we're taking whoever is there. And then of course when Ashitaka brings them back, she's like, oh, thank you, I'm so sorry that I left you guys there to die and bleed out, it's all good.
Yeah, I mean,
she's very single-minded.
Yeah, they did fall off a cliff to be on her side here, because that's what I'm trying to do now.
Joe, you flip sides.
Well, I'm trying to empathize. Is that like if she had brought everyone back to try to rescue those dudes who were probably going to be dead, like if Ashitaki hadn't saved them, they probably would have died by the time they got rescued. Then she potentially could have been attacked again and lost more people. So she maybe made the difficult but necessary decision to help save the rest of the group and get the rice back to feed the entire village.
Yeah. And would she get this much criticism if she were a male leader too?
No, a male leader would have been like,
leave them. And then they wouldn't even said they're sorry. They would have been like,
every man for himself.
Would be like, that's perfectly normal.
He's a strong man that we can respect for making hard choices.
And she is respected, like, you know, for all the criticisms we have of her. It seems like the people of the town really at least respect her and admire her. You know, I'm not sure if that's out of obligation or fear or what the situation is, but you don't really hear anyone speak poorly of her. And in fact, when Ashitaka knocks her out, when she and Sen are fighting, they're furious at him, right? They want to kill him for, they're like, you can't do this to our lady. I think they say that. And so they're very protective of her.
Yeah.
As much as I complain about her sort of savior thing with the sex workers and then putting them into a different kind of heavy labor, they do seem to genuinely love her. As much as I'm complaining about it, I'm probably wrong.
Right. And also, if we were to take the information about her clothing being the clothing of these women who used to do like dancing for men, from what I understood from what I was reading, is that these women are kind of like geisha. And so if that is the clothing that was portrayed on her, she was probably like in a position that wasn't all that different from theirs. And, you know, she found working in this town and creating this iron and this kind of factory system to be beneficial for her. So perhaps that's how she's looking at it for these women as well.
Yeah. So after the forest spirit is decapitated, a black ooze that kills anything that touches it erupts from the forest spirit's body. Well, it starts actually destroying Irontown, and it almost kills the people in Irontown, but they get out in time. The people flee. Ashitaka and San then have to give back the head to the forest spirit so that the ooze stops and to restore the forest spirit. The forest spirit still dies, but the ooze stops after getting the head. And the forest spirit, I guess, lives in the nature and in everything. The ending is bittersweet. The forest spirit dies. The way it's known dies, but then yet it's living in everything. Did you get that sense?
That's the only way I can wrap my head around that all the plant life immediately came back.
Yeah. So many layers in this film. I really felt it was, about conflict between nature and humans, as well as the need for harmony between them. The humans want to take away the forest. The animal gods want to fight back. War, chaos, and destruction ensues among both, and the conflict has potential to destroy both.
Yeah. And so for the remainder of the episode, we thought we would sort of delve into maybe a little bit more personal stuff, but with questions kind of guided by themes and things that happen in the movie, but specifically around Lady Eboshi, who we're here to empathize with today. Annie, do you want to kick us off here with your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So when Lady Eboshi is fighting San/Princess Mononoke in Irontown, she warns her warriors, cut off a wolf's head, and it still has the power to bite. Yet, towards the end of the movie, she seems to kind of forget this, because when she shoots off the head of the wolf god Moro, the head then comes back and bites off her arm. And so she seems to have completely forgotten this advice. And so I'm wondering if there is a time when you forgot your own advice and it came back to bite you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the time. Actually, just yesterday, I was talking to a friend about their relationship, and they're kind of going through a little bit of a bumpy patch where they've asked their partner to do some things and their partner doesn't really seem to be listening or wanting to make a change. And they're like very like hopeful about things getting better in the future. And they're like trying to figure out what to do about it. And my advice is very much like, or was like, you need to live in the relationship that you're in right now, not the relationship that you want to be in later on. And that like, your relationship only is what it is right now. And you have to decide, like, do you want to stay in that and then work towards something better? Or do you want to get out of it because it's not something that you're happy with? So, and I've given that advice to actually a few different friends over the past year in their relationships that I've talked to, but I find that that is advice that I am really bad at making myself, or really bad at taking, because I get so anxious. And so in the past, when I've been in relationships, that's like, I'm always constantly thinking about the future and what's ahead and like what I want it to be or what I'm hoping for. And I have such a hard time living in the moment, but it is the advice that I end up giving just about anybody who is having any trouble with anything. That's like my go-to advice that I rarely take myself.
My piece of advice is a little bit similar. It's not originally my own, but I've carried it with me and kind of taken it as my own and passed it on to some people who might be interested in it. It's a little dark, but sometimes to help you understand the importance of humans in your life and to, like Joe said, pay attention to the moment. You can pretend that you time traveled back in time from the future and to the now. And in the future, you pretend, okay, that in the future, where you've came from, this person that you're with in the now is not around anymore. I told you it's going to be dark, but maybe in the future they left or they died or they're just somewhere else or they're just not with you anymore. Whether this be a friend, a partner, or family member, et cetera, et cetera. But you've come from the future and traveled back in time to the present moment that you're in. And in that moment, you're with that person and that person is still around like crazy. When you do this, you kind of start to appreciate the human that you're with. The moment might even become more special, even though it might be kind of mundane on the surface. So like, oh, I'm with you now. So I need to really enjoy it and pay attention to the present moment with this person, because there could be a time in the future when this person is not with me anymore or not around me, right? And then it kind of puts things in perspective and might even help you just be with that person. And so I think, it's hard to apply this advice to every single interaction. It's helpful in certain instances. So like there was a time I didn't really apply this when I should have. I was like arguing with my partner in Walmart about like the price of potato chips. He didn't like that I wanted to buy a bag of chips that were like $2 more than like the other kind of chips. And I was mad that he was mad about just $2. And it was this whole thing.
Oh, they're just both potato chips, right? Why would you not get the cheaper ones?
See? But I like the other kind.
All right,
because I like the other
continue.
kind of... No. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. And I see your point. I really do. I'm like pointing strangely at the screen. But I was just like, but I like that other kind better. So like, why can't I just
Cost benefit analysis.
cough up $2 more, you know? But it was like, but then it became this whole thing like, oh, why don't you pay attention to the prices more? Or why can't you, and why are you so demanding about $2? And anyway, it was not as dramatic as I'm making it seem. But if I had just like taken that advice, I would have just remembered that the petty things really aren't important. All right. I would have appreciated our time together in Walmart and just dropped the argument, because there could be a time when one of us is not around each other anymore to even argue about these types of petty things. Like I said, it's dark, but in the grand scheme of things, does this really matter? Maybe I just need to appreciate and enjoy the time spent with this person.
Yeah, I love it. You both took very like deep examples that are very personal, relationship based. I took this in a very different direction. A piece of advice that I have given other people, and I try to tell myself, is just to always like listen to your body, and when you are at the point of exhaustion, stop. And I often don't follow that advice. And so I have a specific memory in college when there was a trip that was put on to go to Sky Zone with a bunch of my friends. And so I went to Sky Zone, and I was just jumping. If you don't know Sky Zone, it's a big like trampoline park. And so I was jumping, and I felt my legs very fatigued, and like, I don't know, I wasn't feeling great, but I was like, I'm having fun, so I'm going to keep going. And so we were there for hours. And then I came back, and the next day I couldn't walk, and my knee didn't work. and and it felt terrible. And then I just never went to the doctor about it. And I like let it heal because I couldn't really move for a couple of days. And then I just continued to run on it, and it really messed up my knee, and it took like 1.5 to 2 years to fully recover, I would say. And so, yeah, I should have followed my own advice to take a break.
How long did it take to recover?
I mean, I was able to walk on it and do everyday things, but it hurt, and I like wore a brace on it for probably like 2 years.
Wow.
So,
oh my gosh.
Be careful.
What an intense consequence.
Yeah. That was one of the first moments too where I was like, I guess that I'm not like immortal. Like I'm aging, and my body will not it can't just on 100% power all the time anymore.
That was a great example actually, because unlike mine and Tiana's sort of rambling emotional thing like we normally do, it was a very tangible, clear example. So thank you for that answer.
Well, we need all different types, right?
Texture.
And I know
contrast.
You two have questions too. Yeah.
Tiana, I think you've got a question now.
Yeah. All right. So Lady Eboshi said, I'm going to show you how to kill a god of life and death. The trick is not to fear him. Regardless of whether it was a good idea, when was a time you decided to not fear something much greater than yourself?
I think for me, there was a time, I think it was middle school. So I'm in Austin now, but I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, which is the frozen tundra in the winter.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have, because you guys are both in the Midwest too, right?
I'm in Maine.
I'm from I'm from the Midwest. South Dakota's in the Midwest, right?
South Dakota's definitely in the Midwest, yes.
But both Joe and I went to school in Fargo, Moorhead, so.
Okay, cool. So you're familiar. Yes.
Yep.
So as you know, we have blizzard days sometimes, when it is blizzarding and snow is falling everywhere and it's cold and it's really dangerous to go out in a blizzard. But we had off school, and I was in middle school, and I was like, well, I just really want to go to my friend's house. She lived about 1.5 blocks away, like really, really close, straight shot. So I was like, I'm just going to walk over there. And Mom was like, I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea. Like, you're really not supposed to go outside. But I was like, nature, I can take it.
And you're Fargonian, you can take it.
Yeah. So I bundled up and I went outside, and it was beautiful. Like, if you've never been in that much snow, like, it's just ethereal. Like, you feel like you're on another planet. But the streets, everything was just like blanketed in like snow. It went up to my waist. And so, first of all, that's just like wild. It's like nature just like overtook everything. Like, this town, it could just cover this town instantly. And I started walking, and I thought I was going straight because it was just down the block. And I was walking for what felt like hours. Like, it took so long to like trudge through the snow. And then I looked behind me, and I couldn't see anything, but I could see my footsteps had not gone in a straight line, like not even close. And I was like meandering and like had gone really, really crooked. it was really scary. I was like, this is how people die, because they walk out into a blizzard and then you like collapse or you like get lost and then you can't find your way back. Thankfully, I did make it to my friend's house. She wasn't that much farther away, but that was like a moment where I was like, wow, nature is powerful and I should not mess with it.
That's especially so fitting because it's like the gods of nature gonna take you. Anywho, I actually have a similar example to that. When I was in early high school, I was just experiencing so much FOMO, fear of missing out. And I really, really wanted to go to this get together / kind of party, like when I was a freshman or sophomore in high school. And it was at this house that was also in the countryside, like my house is. And I decided to take my car, bundle up, and like actually drive there during a blizzard. And I just like slid into the ditch and just let the snow catch me. So there's that one. The other example that I have, I live out in the country right now, can get really dark. You hear a lot of coyotes and a lot of critters. I recently just decided to not be very scared of the night. That seems weird, but like what Lady Eboshi is not fearing is a god that takes away life and gives life. And I chose not to fear the night because in the night, life is taken away, right? In the night, coyotes kill, cats kill, people kill, bears kill, mosquitoes spread West Nile virus. And like you could say the night is like an accomplice in taking life away. It's also like much bigger than myself. You have the stars, the planets, the vastness, the darkness, right? You hear like the coyotes howling in the dark. And recently I just have been going out at night with nothing and just experiencing it and like standing there for like hours, especially because my cat is there. And I was like, well, my cat doesn't seem to be very scared, so why should I? Might not always be a good idea, but it is what I decided. And I've had a lot of interesting moments with the stars.
Any scary moments where you're like, oh?
There are sometimes coyotes that start freaking out and howling, but it's a little comforting because I mean, I don't know how coyotes in a pack respond to humans, so there's that concern, but usually a single coyote is afraid of humans, from what I know, right? But I don't know that for sure. Like, a coyote could do anything. And a coyote can have rabies, you know? So, like, sometimes a coyote will be like, coyotes will start, but they are a predator for my cat. So I start, like, howling or yelling back at them, and then they stop. So I like chew them out with howls.
The coyotes are kind of small, right? They just look like cute dogs. So.
Yeah, but they can probably bite.
Yeah, they're unlikely to attack a person unless there's like unusual circumstances, but
right,
legitimately scary for your cat because that is much higher on the probability scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the rabies thing. Our house used to get mice into it. And so I remember when I was like, I would just pick up the mice. Like I'd catch them with my hands, my bare hands, and I'd let them outside. And I was just like, well, if a mouse bites you, it doesn't hurt that bad, right? Like it's fine.
Right.
But then I learned about rabies and that there's like really no cure for it. And it's a pretty terrible death. And so then I stopped doing that.
Well, you know, about 0.5% of people who get rabies survive. So.
Oh, really?
Because they immediately go to the hospital and get the shot or something.
Oh, no.
Okay.
So you pretty much always survive if you get the shot before it reaches your brain. Once it reaches your brain, only about 0.5% of people survive.
Oh,
okay.
It's like 99.95%.
But there's no like cure for it, right? There's just the shot that helps prevent it from getting there.
Yeah.
And then you take the vaccine, right? Is that it?
Yeah. Once it's there. Once it hits you, it like infects you, and then like the infection like crawls slowly up towards your brain. So if you get it before it gets to your brain, you're like almost certainly fine. Once it gets to your brain, you're almost certainly dead. And the reason I know so much about rabies is because about 2 hours ago, I listened to a Radiolab episode all about rabies.
Oh, hey, look at that.
So that was just a coincidence.
Serendipitous.
Do you know if coyotes in a pack would be confident to attack a human?
It would be unlikely
Okay.
Unless there was like sort of extreme circumstances. So like if they were regularly getting people food, that's sort of the biggest reason that any animal ends up attacking people, is because they've been conditioned for human food and then they start being willing to take risks that they otherwise wouldn't take. But for the most
How do you know
part,
so much about coyotes?
so I well, I'm very interested in nature and I listen to multiple podcasts that are about animal attacks. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and just for whatever reason, coincidentally, right now, multiple issues that are surrounding podcasts I've listened to recently are coming up. I'm not typically an expert on everything.
Mm-hmm. You could become a veterinarian and then get like a yearly rabies vaccine.
Yeah, I probably couldn't become a veterinarian.
Those things are expensive.
Yeah.
Because my sister, she works at a wildlife refuge in Colorado, and she has to get that, and they're not cheap, and you have to keep getting them.
Yeah, but I bet you feel pretty protected when you're in that field, which is nice. So, yeah, thankfully my mom is vaccinated against rabies. So, if she sees a rabid coyote, I'll just tell my mom, "Hey, go punch that." Anywho, Joe, I want to know your answer. Did you answer?
No, but I guess for me, I also was in the Midwest for a while, but I moved to Maine a little over 5 years ago with my partner at the time. We broke up after like a year and a half here, and I hadn't bothered to make any friends while we were together. So then we broke up and I had basically no friends. And then I slowly, over a couple of years, got like a small little friend group. But this past year, I turned 30, and I was like, this is the year that I am like going to make an effort to be like emotionally open to like other people and other experiences. So that was sort of the fear that I overcame, is that I'm like very shy and anxious, and it's really hard for me to come out of my little bubble. And so that is what I've been working on this year. And I've been like, when I'm meeting people that seem cool, I've been really making an effort to ask them to hang out. And it's been really, really hard and really uncomfortable for me, but I'm slowly like learning that it's okay to do that, and that actually people like when you do that, because most people, seems like around our age, are also looking for friends, because it's hard to make friends after college, I think.
It is.
Very true.
That's the fear that I'm working on overcoming. And my question is like very much sort of related in the same vein, but sort of in a more theoretical sense. I wanted to know your thoughts on whether or not eliminating your fear is really useful. How useful is it actually a problem? So like in my example, overcoming that fear was really beneficial, but in some ways, like Annie, your sort of lack of fear going into the blizzard ultimately could have caused you a lot of harm. So what kind of a role do you feel that fear plays in your decision making, and how much emphasis do you give it? And just your general thoughts.
That's a good question. I think you need to have some lack of fear, maybe not like 0%, but I think you need to get rid of some of your fear in doing a task, because if you're nervous and doing the task, you might not be as effective in accomplishing it. So like when Lady Eboshi is going to shoot the forest spirit, right? If she would have been nervous or scared, she probably would have missed her target, because her hands are shaking from being anxious and nervous about it. So, or like you, Joe, like if you meet someone and you want to ask them, oh, do you want to hang out? If you're like, do you want to hang out with me? It might not be very effective in completing that task. So you either need to get rid of the fear more, or you need to try and fake it better. So yeah, getting rid of the fear, I think, helps you in like doing the task a lot of times. And I'm not saying bring it down to 0%, but definitely less than 100.
Yeah, like it's important to recognize, I guess, when fear is useful, or sort of that idea, which my therapist talks about a lot, is that like all emotions are useful, like anxiety, fear, depression,
Right.
like all of them serve a purpose, but it's like how much of each one is appropriate for the situation that you're in is sort of what you have to contend with often.
For sure.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with both of you. I just looked this up because I wanted to attribute this. So there's this quote that I like, and it's "do the thing you fear the most." And it's, of course, attributed to Mark Twain, which 50% of all quotes are attributed to. But I think for me, as someone who's like a more naturally cautious person, and I will take risks, but I'm very calculated in taking risks, and I don't tend to do things spontaneously. Sometimes it's good for me to kind of like throw caution to the wind and see what I can accomplish if I don't overthink it. And so one example of that was in college, we had a language requirement. So I took Spanish. And for, I think it was the second Spanish class I took, or the third, because we had to take 4 semesters of it. There was an opportunity to take it in Costa Rica, and it was an immersion program. So you stay with a host family, you're speaking Spanish the whole time. It's a very immersive experience. And like, I was nervous about it, but I didn't think about it too hard. I was like, yeah, like being in Costa Rica over January sounds really fun. I had heard of some people who were interested in going, and the professor seemed really cool. And I had seen that quote recently. I think it was on like a bathroom stall door. Someone had written it or something. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. And so then I got there and I realized I don't know Spanish. And I was really terrified. And my host family didn't speak any English. And I was like, holy crap, what am I going to do? And then it ended up being really great, and I got really close with my host family, and I didn't really know anyone on the trip, so I made friends, and my Spanish improved drastically because it was a sink or swim situation. And so I think that's a situation where I was like, okay, it was really good of me to have just gone for it and then put in the work to make it work, right? To meet people and to practice the language and get immersed in the culture. And then on the other hand, I think it is important, like we have fear for a reason, right? And that's to help us to have some caution, and it can also help us prepare things. So I know I had a professor who would always say, like, introverts actually tend to, this is according to him, he's an introvert, to be better public speakers because they over-prepare for things. Whereas someone who can just, you think of someone who can just, like, is extroverted and just jump in and give a great speech, that's great. But then if someone asks them a question that they're unprepared for, then they might stumble a little more. Whereas, like, someone who's more afraid of public speaking, they will have prepared every single possibility. And so, you know, I think it depends on the situation.
Like I love public speaking, and people always like question that because they're always like, but you're always talking about how shy and anxious you are. Like, what are you doing on stage? But that's exactly it, is that my anxious mind is constantly running through like all the possible scenarios of what could happen. So I'm like pre-prepared for a lot of different situations to occur.
Indeed.
I'm trying to work on getting rid of more fear and just like letting it go, but I'll let you know how it goes. I think it's just doing the thing. Just go for it, even if your voice shakes.
Well, next time you are fearful, you can manifest Lady Eboshi with her gun.
Yeah.
And take that energy into your situation.
It's so interesting how I think Lady Eboshi feels that she's as great as a god or greater. Isn't that so fascinating? Like that's why she's so confident in shooting down gods and shooting the forest spirit. Like she's like, I'm as good as a god. I'm greater than that.
Does she think I'm as good as a god, or does she think the gods just aren't that great?
Maybe that.
It's just like, they're just, you know, they're there. I don't know if she reveres them.
And then I was like, what good is a god if they die? Are they even that great?
Philosophical questions.
Yeah, you're right. She's probably just like, they're not that great. Anywho, does anyone else have anything to add about Lady Eboshi before we get into our spicy segment?
No. I mean, I don't.
Okay.
I'm excited for the spice.
Well, it's a little silly and spicy. So we're going to share Tinder profiles for Lady Eboshi and pretend that Lady Eboshi is going to date and needs a Tinder profile. So we've written some for her. So each one of us has our own Tinder profile for Lady Eboshi. On Spotify, you can vote whichever Tinder bio you like best.
Yeah, I'll make a little graphic for each of them so we can post them on Instagram. And then you can go like them on Instagram to vote for who you think is the best as well. So you could like on Instagram, or you could vote on Spotify.
Yes.
Or you could just email us at nextdoorvillain@gmail.com.
Or you can call me
and
tell me which one you love.
What's your number, Tiana, for the public?
218. No, just kidding.
Just kidding. Who's going first here?
Annie is the guest. Annie should go first.
All right, here it goes. So her profile name is The Iron Lady. She's 31, 6'2", factory owner, and self-elected mayor of Irontown. I'm not actually sure how she got elected. Tall, dom, a natural-born leader who dislikes nature. Interested in women only. Past experience desired. Willing to pay. I like hunting, knife fighting, and caring for lepers. I dislike wild animals, walks through the woods, and incompetence. They say God is dead. You can thank me for that. Swipe left if you're a tree-hugging vegan.
Very good. I took quite a different approach because I thought about why Lady Eboshi would be on Tinder and what her feelings toward it would be. And I think that she wouldn't really care about it that much, that it would be sort of like a flippant thing that she does when she's bored, almost just for her own fun or pleasure. And I didn't think she would put a lot of time and energy into her profile, that she would do something sort of dark and flirty, but just wouldn't put a lot of effort into it. So I wrote one very simple line. Her profile says, "I don't trust men, so I tie them up." And then that little purple devil emoji.
Nice.
I like it.
Gets to the point. I'd probably swipe right on that. Not sure if she would swipe right on me, but that's another story. Okay. Anywho, mine is name, Lady Eboshi. Age, my age doesn't matter if I live forever. Her bio is, I produce the iron and steel, baby. Do you think I could steal you? Come and create demons, I mean babies, with me. We'll eat some good rice porridge as we sit overlooking the smoke. Ugh, sorry about that. I'm very sorry. What am I looking for? A way into the forest, a way into prosperity. Come shoot down the barriers to our expansion with me.
Jan, I like how you and I, without collaborating, we end up coming up with like very similar formatted things.
Yeah. And that's the first and last Tinder profile I'll ever write.
Same.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's why we wrote ours like we did. We don't know what we're doing. So I looked up examples.
Oh, yeah, me too.
It's so open. That's one thing I feel like at like older dating sites, it's kind of more prescribed, like how you format it. But for Tinder, it's like so wide open. And people get really, really creative, which is the fun thing about it. Some of them are like one-liners, like Joe's. There's like longer things. Some of them are very dependent on the photo too, that are there.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah,
world
so
unknown.
again, you can go vote on Spotify or on Instagram by liking our Tinder profiles, our fake Tinder profiles that I'm going to post on there. But we got to end our episode like we always do nowadays by rating our villain. Tiana, what should we rate our villain with today?
Forest spirit heads or women? No. Guns, iron ore. I don't know what that looks like, though. I don't know what actual iron ore looks like.
All right. So
What do you think?
how many buckets of iron ore out of 5 do you give the Lady Eboshi?
is this like how evil she is, or
It's
like how
whatever.
interesting of
All
a
right,
character she is?
I'll go first, Annie, so you can see how it's done, and then you can do whatever you want. I'm gonna give Lady Eboshi 4.5 buckets of iron out of 5. The reason is because I think as a villain, she's done a really good job overall. As someone who, like, the environment is, like, to me, really important. I think that she has sort of indiscriminately gone into nature just to destroy it for her own personal gain, even though she, like, I guess is sort of a savior to these, like, women and lepers. I'm not sure her motivations are that pure, because she's really using their love and labor to advance her own wealth and power status, and she kills one forest god and she almost kills another. If anything, I'm taking half a bucket of iron away because she didn't succeed in killing the second forest god despite all her confidence and sexy villain power. So for those reasons, 4.5 buckets of iron for Lady Eboshi from me.
Okay. I'm going to give her 3 buckets of iron ore out of 5. I like her. I like her laugh. I think it's very pretty and nice.
So
yeah, I think I'm kind of. Oh, go ahead,
I was
Jeff.
just gonna tell you, it's sort of the rating doesn't really matter. It's sort of your like summary, I guess, in a sense.
Sort of like whose line is it anyway, where the points don't matter, and I don't know what the other part of that is. Maybe you guys haven't seen
But
that.
the
That's an
laughter
older-
does.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll pick a random number, which is what I plan to do anyway. I'm going to go right in between you guys to play it safe. I'm going to go with 4 out of 5 buckets of iron ore. I think she has a lot of qualities of a good villain. She's very single-minded. She can be pretty ruthless sometimes in her goals and ignore the other people around her. I think that she does lack in some pure villain qualities. She seems to be able to express remorse. I don't really think she has henchmen per se. Like, she has other people who work in the town, but it's not really like she doesn't have these like sidekicks who are like would do anything for her. I don't think. Although I don't know, the women of the town were pretty loyal to her. So
Yeah, Taki would do anything for her, I think.
yeah, I don't know if I describe them as henchmen, but there's that. But yeah, I think she's a really cool character. I like her grayness, and yeah, I also like her laugh, Tiana.
Yeah.
I like in the English version, she's the only one who has a British accent. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I my new favorite thing, because growing up when I watched the Studio Ghiblis, I mostly listened to like Kiki's Delivery Service and or watch Kiki's Delivery Service and like Totoro's, like the lighter ones, but I always listened to them in English, and so now it's fun to like rewatch them in Japanese and notice differences, and then also to watch ones like Princess Mononoke that are a little bit darker.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess that's it. And this has been one of our longer episodes, so I hope people stuck around for the end, because Annie, I was hoping you could one more time give a plug for your podcast, which we really love.
Yeah, sure. So podcast is Misfits. It's probably easiest to search if you're searching on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Misfits with Annie Prafcke, Prafcke. You can also find us on social media like Instagram and Twitter at ACXP Misfits. And yeah, it's really great. I think, kind of like you said, it does a little bit similar things to Next Door Villains, where we're just trying to talk to people from different walks of life and understand where they come from.
Yeah. And if you don't want to search for Annie's podcast, you can just go in the show notes of this episode, and there'll just be a link right there, so you can hop right over after you're done listening to this episode.
All the info.
Beautiful.
So, yeah. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.